America Tonight's Sheila McVicker with us. Sheila, this has really launched a dragnet across France.
A dragnet. The police have made very clear they have called in everything that they have got. We have seen raids tonight in Paris, in the northern city of Reims, and right on the Belgian border on the French city of Charleville-Mézières. In Charleville-Mézières, we are told by the AFP, the Agence France-Presse, that they have taken into custody the youngest of the three suspects. He is an 18-year-old. He was previously described as homeless and living in Paris, presumably on the streets. Tonight they found him at a relative's home, we are told by the AFP, in Charleville-Mézières. As to the other two, who are brothers, French of Algerian origin, 34 and 32 years old, one of whom was previously convicted of his involvement in a network that was sending young French nationals to fight against the American-led coalition in Iraq in that war there. He did time in prison for that. There has been no trace. They have been in a family home, the police tonight, looking for additional evidence, but so far there is no trace. And there is no trace of the car, as far as we know, that they used to finally make their escape from Paris.
Fascinating. We want to bring into the discussion here Dr. David Gartenstein-Ross. He's an expert on militant organizations like Al-Qaeda and also a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. You know, it is striking. I mean, I haven't seen anyone come out and make a public claim of responsibility, a tie-in to a particular group, an Al-Qaeda, ISIS, who?
Public claims of responsibility often take a while. If you look back at the 7/7 attacks that occurred on July 7th, 2005 in Britain, Al-Qaeda did not make a claim of responsibility for a full year. In this case, I expect a much faster claim of responsibility if it's attached to a group, which it increasingly looks like it is. The reason being, you have this major competition for dominance over the global jihad between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And if one of them is responsible for this, they certainly will want people to know.
Yeah.
They want to make a claim for that.
And we heard from eyewitnesses who reported that not only were the gunmen speaking in perfect French, which very strongly suggests that they are French nationals, they also said that we are Al-Qaeda. And there are several witnesses who've reported them saying that. But again, unknown.
Yeah, and very striking here, as Sheila, you mentioned in your report, the level of professionalism, as it were, for these actors in this situation, an indication that it is not just three guys on their own.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, they're not as highly trained as, say, commandos are. There's a very good piece in the Washington Post by Thomas Gibbons-Neff looking at some of the tactical errors that they made, crossing in front of each other, for example. But it seems like receiving some sort of military experience or training in Syria.
They knew how to hold their guns?
Right. They knew how to hold the guns. They also engaged in other small unit tactics. You know, they were checking for anyone crossing them. They were clearing paths before them. There were a few things they were doing that they were doing very right. So I think that when all is said and done, we don't know right now, but I strongly suspect that they'll have received some sort of military training or other experience during their time in Syria.
And this would seem quite alarming for France. After all, people who speak perfect French, clear relationship to France,
yes,
and yet with a kind of training that must have come from somewhere else.
Well, this is the ticking time bomb that so many people have been warning about. We don't know for certain that these two individuals went to Syria. There is speculation that they have been involved in Syria. But certainly the former chief of the French Interior Service said today that given their demeanor, given everything about the way in which they moved, it was his opinion that they clearly had received training somewhere, and that training might even have been in France. Remember, one of these brothers was being watched. He, as somebody who had been convicted of links to a terror organization, he would have been on the radar. If he slipped out of the country and went to Syria and was trained in Syria after he got out of jail, that is an enormous black eye for the French intelligence services.
Which the French security operation is quite a thorough operation, a high functioning, and you know, in this particular case, already paying a good deal of attention to the magazine and to the editors and cartoonists.
It's a thorough operation, but it's also one with a big scale of problem. I mean, you've had about 700 Frenchmen go over to Syria, and I think Sheila makes a very good point that there's things that we don't know right now. I mean, Syria has been reported in certain places like McClatchy, but all first reports have to be treated with skepticism. But they have about 700 people who've gone over to France. If you look to Syria, and if you look last month, you had 3 consecutive days in France when terrorist attacks were carried out, a stabbing in a police station, a man driving his car into a Christmas market. They have a real problem, which means that even though they have very good security services and very little regard for privacy, they also have such a problem on their hands that they just can't have their handle on all of it.
And the other part of this, of course, we should also talk about the gun. In an American context, two men armed with an automatic rifle is not that unusual. In France, it is very unusual. You cannot walk into the French equivalent of a Walmart and simply pick up an automatic weapon. So the police will be extremely interested to know where these two got that weapon from, and they will be squeezing every one of their sources in the French underworld looking for the source of those guns.
Yeah, Doctor, I mean, that is real indication of how different things are in France. I mean, we look at it as Americans, how do the French operate? How do they keep a lid on these things?
Absolutely, and it's also one reason that it affected the police response. I mean, you had at least one report of police rushing in and then seeing the kind of weapons these guys had and then backing out. I mean, they were better armed than the police who were responding. That's a real problem from a police perspective.
Yeah. And then there were even some suggestions that there may have been a rocket-propelled grenade available to these individuals as well.
There were some reports early on that has not been confirmed, and the police and the prosecutor have not said that in any of the news conferences that they have subsequently held. What is for all of the professionalism that they seem to have exhibited, or at least the amount of training, there also are some funny aspects to this. They had the address wrong. There are
They didn't know how to get in.
They didn't know how to get in. They basically had to take a woman hostage. And there are reports that they left a piece of important ID in their original car.
Fascinating. All right, we'll learn more here. America Tonight's Sheila McVicker, as well as Dr. David Gartenstein-Ross. Thanks very much.